Welcome back to episode 13 of Open Door Conversations. Today's episode title is Mama's Boy. How have you shaped him? I'm one of your hosts. My name is Renata.
And I'm your other host, Fatima.
And we are back.
So, when you say that title, it always makes me smile. And it makes me smile because, in some instances, Mama's Boy, it used to be cute, but on the other hand, it used to not have a good connotation with it.
Right.
To be considered a mama's boy was to be considered not knowing how to handle things on your own. Your mom always had to do everything for you. You don't know how to cook, wash dishes. You don't know how to do nothing. Anything that needed to be done that was domesticated, you couldn't do because your mama always did it, number one.
Right.
And so if you were to ask me, that's how I would see mama's boy. And that's why I always smile just in saying that,
Right.
because of the thought of a mama's boy.
Listen, I'm with you. I think if you had caught me about a decade ago, I know, not even think, I know, it's come out of my mouth for sure. Dated, been with. Yeah. The old definition.
Okay, I'm glad you said the old definition, because I was going to ask you, so what is the difference now in mama's boy?
I think what the difference now is that instead of looking, I think, at identity, maybe, I would maybe hone in on more behavior. I think back in the day, we really focused on, like, this is who you are. You latched, you're stuck, no real, pattern for your life, that kind of thing. Everything you just described. And you just there, like everything your mom wants or needs from you, you can't make a decision without her. You have to run everything by her. You in a relationship, she's telling you what to do, like that's what I would think of in terms of, and we really link that, I think, whether we called it that or not, identity. Like that's who you are. And now I think you can look at more of someone's actions, behavior, and take it away from that being his identity. Because I think when I think about that term now and some of the experiences or times in which I've witnessed like healthy mother-son relationships, these gentlemen are not latched. They're successful. They have, some of them are married, some of them are not. They have great careers, but how they engage with their mother, they're able to have open dialogue and conversation. It's not like she's still parenting him and has her thumb on him and he can't make a decision without her. He's able to ask for her support or advice and still go along with what's best for him. He's not altering who he is or what he wants to do or functioning different in his relationship because there's so much of a heavy influence from his mom. So that's why I say I take it to more of behavior than just a decade or more ago. It was like, no thanks. Let me see how you navigate the relationship with your mom. And yeah, no. But I want you to have a good relationship with your mom now.
So there's two things that you said that's very important. One of the things was a healthy relationship with mom.
Yeah.
That's important to understand. And we'll get into that too. And the other thing that you said is there used to be a saying is, watch how he treats his mom because that's how he's going to treat you. But that's not true. Some people think because they have a good relationship with their mom that they're going to have a good relationship with you. The thing about it is though it may appear that they have a good relationship with their mom, but is it a healthy, good relationship with their mom? So
Underlying.
that's the difference in that is if it's not healthy, it's not a good relationship. We were speaking earlier, and one of the things that we discussed is that the importance of mothers and fathers in their kids' lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so we always hear how important it is for a boy to have his father around because he's going to teach him how to be a man, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And for a female, it's important for her mom to show her how to be a woman, how to be a lady, so on and so forth. And that is true. Unequivocally, that is true.
Mm-hmm.
However, that relationship that mom has with the son and that dad has with the daughter defines who's going to be in their life, in their intimate relationships.
Right.
So if my relationship as a male with mom is not a healthy one, then I'm not going to know how to have healthy, intimate relationships as I get older. And audience is probably thinking, well, y'all are women. What do you know about being men, boys, so on and so forth? Because we're actually probably going to surprise you because we're actually speaking on the behalf of the men and their relationships with us women and
Mm-hmm.
as mothers. Because when you think about it and you look back into it, how often do we hear mothers say, he thinks he's my boyfriend or he thinks he's my man? Okay, well, what have you done, said, and how have you acted for him to respond in that way?
Mm-hmm.
And let's just be real. And I'm going to, so we can make sure that we have enough time to cover this. And there is no nice way to say it. And I'm not bashing us women. I want everything that we do is from a teaching perspective. And so, with the understanding of most men in our community dislike Black women,
Oh, no, see, you didn't go there.
not because of the woman, not because of who she is, not because of how she acts in the street, not because she's loud, but because she's a reminder of his mother
Uh-oh.
and how she raised him, the things that she said to him, the way that she treated him, the demands that she placed upon him, carried over into how he feels about Black women. The same as how, and so what's interesting about that fact too is Black women stay loyal. Almost most Black women stay loyal to Black men because in the midst of everything that they saw their mothers go through, what did they do? They still stayed with that man.
Mm,
And see, unknowingly, that is how we raised our kids.
mm,
And so we've taught them how to feel about each other as we get older and as we get into relationships.
mm, mm-hmm.
And
Mm.
so with that, I'll give it to you.
Listen, I don't have much to add. I think I was just going to ask a question. Oh my goodness. That's deep. Because one of the highlight points we wanted to cover was like a question in regards to, does parenting styles then create attachment bonds or wounds?
Mm.
And I think that's exactly what you just described. It has the ability to do both. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll come back with more of episode 13.
This podcast is brought to you by Ebony Ascent. Be sure to check out all of our content on ebonyascent.com. Ebony Ascent, the spectrum of what's possible.
Okay, that should be good for them to come back. All right, welcome back. Thank you guys for listening. This is episode 13 of Open Door Conversation, and we are talking about, this is a hard topic, I tell you,
Is
mama's boy. And I think we had, before the break, we were just talking about parenting styles and whether or not they create attachment bonds, healthy attachment bonds, I should preface that, or wounds. Like, and by attachment bonds in layman's terms, we just mean connection. Does your parenting style create or help to create or facilitate healthy connection with your son, and really helps him facilitate healthy connection with his future partner's wife, right? Or does it create wounds, attachment wounds, or connection wounds? And I think, that particular question point we wanted to cover was everything that you just said. And I would have to say yes and yes. How you parent, how you and the expectations, I think, is something that we had kind of briefly talked about before we started, was the expectations that our community and what we've seen over the years has placed on young, Black men or young Black youth. And I would say even for our young girls too. Of course,
Absolutely.
this episode we're just talking about men, but yes, and all of those expectations and how you parent, and do you have an aggressive or authoritarian type parenting style? Are you too loose with your parenting style? I think all of those things, how you engage with him, the messages that you share with him. Here's sometimes the things that you don't even share verbatim or specifically to him, but he witnesses, or that's how you engage. So oftentimes, I have friends who talk about the direct abusive, verbal, emotional, psychological abuse they've suffered at the hands of their mother, and the passive aggressiveness that they've experienced. So maybe it's not direct, but indirectly they've experienced that type of, parenting and engagement or emotional connection or the lack thereof. And that's his system. That's what he's learned. And he's going to, unless he's come in contact with other information or had a different experience, that's what he's going to take with him. How does he know to be or react, or better yet, respond, if that's all he knows? These lofty expectations of him to act like the man of the house, or, really, if we dial it back, your partner, in that sense. I mean, and this is not a bash on mothers.
I know.
I'm a woman. My sister's a woman. I'm raising a son.
I was a single mother.
Hello.
So
Grew
like
up
you
in a
said,
single parent home, but my
yes.
father was around, but I lived primarily with my mom. So a lot of different experiences here coming to the table. And I'm raising a very strong-willed alpha young male.
But with that too, what I will say to that though is, but at the same time that he's a strong-willed alpha male, even at such a young age, is in tune with his emotions,
Oh,
and you allow him to have that.
yeah.
And I think that with that is another thing that within our community has been something that has been squashed, something that is not allowed, something that you're not supposed to do. And so, to the point of in the beginning, when men do show that, oh, you're a mama's boy.
If he expresses himself.
Yeah, if you're expressing your feelings, if you're emotional, oh, you're just a mama's boy. Oh, that's where you just too soft. So that's where that also comes from. When our men aren't allowed to show those emotions or those feelings. And to your point, they grow up into men not knowing how to do that.
Yeah. And that I will say, because I think sometimes, if we're real, probably the last maybe, I'm going to conservatively say maybe the last 5 years. It could be more than that, but I'm going to say conservative the last 5 years. where we've seen this kind of push to in our own community around like mental health and therapy and getting support, and whether you have a spiritual mentor or you have someone in your church counseling or people going to therapy themselves. So we're saying this in hopes that it's no one's offended, but so that you can see what happens on the other end when your husband, your
Mm.
son, your brother, your uncle, your best friend who's a male decides to go into therapy, or he's struggling emotionally, mentally, psychologically, maybe even it's starting to impact him physically, and or he's having a hard time navigating conversations with you because he has little to no emotional language.
Mm.
And, you know, we want you to see how what you do is so important. You have the potential to really affect healthy change and have and really help foster healthy relationships, because I would argue that, I think we said in the beginning, like it's such a huge responsibility.
Yes.
Not discounting dad's role or anything like that, but as a woman, most women, you're nurturers, or at least that's what we've, as a society, right, have stated in some way, shape, or form, that most women are nurturers. And you may disagree, that's totally fine. You can send us an email. But ultimately, what I'm getting at is that I see that as a beautiful responsibility to
Yes.
help facilitate his emotional growth, so that when he gets into relationship with his wife, he has daughters, what have you, it's a beautiful experience, right? It's a
Mm.
healthy experience for our community. And moms, you're at the helm. Aunts, you're at the
Yeah.
helm. Grandmother, you're at the helm. Sister, you're at the helm, right? Everybody in his life, allowing him to be a person who is able to express himself, and the way in which you engage with him is healthy.
I love everything about what you just said. And here's my question to those for you, for those that might be listening and thinking, first of all, do I do that? Second of all, how do I undo that?
Mm,
And for the male that might be thinking, you know what? My mom did do that. That does make sense as they sit and listen and process it. Like that is so that has been, or they start to remember things.
mhm,
Because again, when you know better, you do better. And for us, we teach better.
mhm.
But how do you navigate to finding an answer
Mhm.
or even move forward for healing once you realize that?
Mm. How do you move forward once you realize it? I'll tell you, one of the first things I think that's so important in that space once you recognize it is identify your supports.
Mm.
And I say that because as you start to either A, unpack, B, start to show up differently, right? You're gonna need people around you, because so much about you may be changing, and people are either gonna be uncomfortable with it, they don't know what to do with it. You may start doubting yourself, that type of thing. And you need a support network who's really gonna be able to really foster the growth and the change and the unpacking that you're doing. And so I think that's really valuable. Now, with that being said, I have experience in terms of like working with people, some of my own friends, and I'll say even myself, a lot of males don't have a lot of friends. So what do you do then? Uh, I'm going to advocate therapy. And here's why. Because that is a safe space, number one.
Yes.
The person's holding confidentiality, unless you're going to say something about hurting yourself or somebody else, right? So you can be comfortable knowing that they're not going to be going back and running and telling your business, right? Because there's confidentiality there. Ethically, they have to maintain that, right? Depending on what it is, and if it's released, there may be some legal implications. So you don't have to usually worry about somebody who has done a lot of work to obtain a license, putting that in jeopardy. So there's a safety net for you, right? There's a safety net. And a lot of therapy can be a professionally corrective, healthy experience.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is where you may not been able to express yourself, there's the space to do that. Where you may not have had the language before, you're going to probably learn to have that. Your emotional vocabulary can be expanded. You can learn how to have conversations. You can model and practice in that space. You get to unpack some of the things that you've experienced and heal from some of those experiences. There's just so much I think that could be done in that space. And so that's why I advocate look for and find a therapist in your area. You want to make sure that it's a good fit for you. Read their profiles, ask for a consultation, a free consultation if they offer that. There's so much, I think, work that can be done for the listener who's saying, well, that's me. I experienced that. And I would say therapy first as well, because I encourage people to have conversations eventually. Or if you can't, because maybe they've passed on, there are different techniques that you can use to kind of help with that healing journey. I think, at least has been my experience, one of, not the only, but one of the most rewarding experiences is working with males and them get into a place where they're able to function from in love and health and wholeness, and they're not carrying around wounds, and they're not living stuck.
And do you know how beautiful that is to see as well? To see a man that is like my nephew, a strong alpha male, but emotionally available.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is such a beautiful thing. I mean, and when women speak of protection, that's the type of protection that they are desiring.
Yeah.
Is that you can protect me emotionally, that you can protect me spiritually, and then the physical protection comes after that.
Right.
And so when you were saying that, and I'm glad that you said that you advocate for conversations when you're ready, but more so for therapy, because that was going to be my question. So what about to the person that's sitting there like, that's me? Let me go have this conversation and tell her what she did. No, like you said, we need to have our emotional vocabulary a little bit stronger before we run off and do that, because that can do more harm than good. Because now you're going off of the emotion before even processing.
Right.
And then that doesn't always, if ever, turns out very well.
And I know this is not the episode for that. Go back a couple where we talked a little bit about boundaries. And I think that that's something that needs to be in place in the first place. And that's, I think, why a lot of times the challenges that males experience in the relationship, or even female, right? Everybody experiences in relationships, because there isn't any boundary. There isn't any boundary in parent and child relationships. And for some, depending on where you grew up, when you grew up, how you grew up, and what was taught in your space, a lot of children grow up without boundaries. They're growing up in a space where nobody is allowing for them to have parameters. And I think that's probably one of the most unhealthy and dangerous lives to live, because people can just do and say whatever they want and however they want. And there isn't any recourse. Like think, for example, how many times have you been out in public and you witnessed some person, some woman degrading her son or daughter, cursing, yelling, whatever, right? And I'm sorry, there's no justification for that. That's not loving, that's not healthy, that's not wisdom in terms of how you talk to your kids. And you can most certainly bet that's probably going to cause some form of emotional trauma in him. Guarantee it, especially if it's ongoing. Let me say that.
Yes.
And you see that, and I've seen toddlers, I've seen teen, and you just, you don't understand what that's doing to him on the inside, his self-worth, how he views you, how he views women, how he views the world around him. There's so many messages that he can take from that type of an experience, and there's no boundary. He doesn't have the space to say, here's a boundary. Mom, what you did hurt my feelings. You know why? Because if he said anything like that, he probably, in some instances where there's no boundaries and there's no boundaries allowed, he could probably be punished for that. And so he learns that I just got to take and accept whatever is said or done to me. And so I think that, number one, start there. Now I'm teaching my kids tone. Some people may not agree. I'm like, okay, you can have conversation, but let's watch our tone. But even now my kids will say, well, Mom, and I'm not cursing and yelling at my kids, but sometimes I may firmly say something, and for whatever reason, maybe they had a long day, it still hurts their feelings, or they don't get what they want and their feelings are still hurt. And Buddy will say stuff like, you touch my feelings. And I know what he means. And instead of me blowing him off, or telling him to shut up or whatever it may be, or degrading him, or lashing out on him or whatever, in public and private, whatever, I'm like, you know what? Let me listen to his feelings and understand what caused him to feel that way. And if need be, Buddy, yeah, I'm sorry. That was not my intention. Forgive me, because I wasn't intending to hurt your feelings. And yet, here's also the lesson, or here's also what we have to, or here's also, right? There's a way to do that.
What I want to have an understanding of is, as you said, we have so many shared experiences that this is not something that we've always known and always done. Again, once you know better, you do better. And that's where this is coming from, especially being in the counseling and therapy field and hearing and seeing and being more aware and more in tune to people's thoughts, people's feelings, and their facial reactions. So I think that that's very important, as you said, is that's where so much of it starts. Because even my nephew at one time, my tone changed.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought that I was yelling at the lady in the drive-through. We are so intentional about how we are with how we speak to them. It was something different yelling because my tone changed. And so I have to be even more intentional when I do speak to him as well. And I think that that's, as you said, of our intentionality of how we raise our children.
Listen, we can go on and on about this topic. I'm telling you, we got 2 in a row where this is going to be talking about males, because I think that it's something that's needed. I think that as we continue on, of course, we're going to have way more conversations about, both men and women, that type of thing. But I think this is a topic near and dear to my heart. I have 2 biological nephews. I have my heartborn, one, geez, there's a lot. I didn't realize that. A couple of heartborn nephews. I have 2 godchildren who are males. and a host of other friends' kids. You know, I used to be a pank, professional aunt, no kids before I had kids. And so they're near and dear to my heart. All kids are, you know, near and dear to my heart. And yet I think that, not that it doesn't happen to young girls, but I think that people tend to be a little bit more softer with them than males. And so we just want to make sure that, you know, we hopefully turn this mama's boy term around. It
Yes.
becomes more of one where we see him as someone who is healthy, and how he engages his mom and his sister and other women in his life is really a term that shows endearment and not the negative, you know, connotation that we may have all grown up with. So there you have it.
I agree.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, if there is any question or concern or comment that you'd like to leave, please hit us up on email at opendoorconvo@gmail.com, or you can reach us on Facebook or Instagram at Open Door Convo. As always, we appreciate your support, your listening support, and we ask that you would share the Open Door Conversations podcast. And until next time, we will catch you back on the podcast.
Thank you all again for listening, and we will see you next time.
All right, take care.